What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to another review on this channel. So I mentioned in my Muse albums ranking video that I would be reviewing this album. And by the way, check that video out. I plan on reviewing every Muse and Arctic Monkeys album on this channel, going back and forth, back and forth. So next up would be Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, going backwards to the very start for both bands. But in the meantime, I'm going to start off with the beautiful Simulation Theory. This cover is awesome. I just have to say that right away. It's definitely one of the best covers. I really like how they took a bunch of influences from 80s films. So you've got that Star Wars look, but you've got elements of Back to the Future as well. You've got a lot of retro on here, and that's the cool thing because this album is basically meant to be retro. It's meant to be an 80s inspired album, kind of like an 80s inspired take with synths and everything on Muse, and I thought that was really cool. And I think the album as a whole is really cool. I think it's a great album, and I'm excited to talk about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each song. I'm going to talk about the alternate reality versions alongside the song. I'm going to give each song a rating out of 10. I'm not going to give a rating for the alternate reality or the acoustic versions or whatever. I don't really count those as part of the album, but I feel it's best to talk about them just because they are kind of important and people might want to know my thoughts. So I'll talk about those briefly. I'm going to go through each song, talk about what I like, what I don't like, kind of introduce each one and give it a rating out of 10. And then I'll give the album a final score. The final score won't be based on the scores of the songs because I'm also taking into account, the flow of the songs into each other and kind of the overall album as a whole, because sometimes the individual pieces can be greater than the whole, while other times the whole can be greater than the individual pieces. At least that's what I find with albums. So let's get started with Algorithm. So Algorithm was our opening track, and they really couldn't have gotten a better opener for this album, I think. Now, one thing about Simulation Theory a lot of hardcore Muse fans have noticed is that some of these are kind of modern takes on old Muse classics. Some of these songs are very reminiscent of older Muse tracks. And the one that Algorithm gets compared to a lot is Take a Bow, because they're both very synth-heavy opening songs that are very cinematic. And I really do like that comparison. I do think Take a Bow is overall a better song. I think that's one of their all-time greats. I think this is a great song as well. But Algorithm's really a fantastic opener for an album and for potentially a concert set list. I think that Algorithm is really awesome. It starts off with that epic synth intro. It does take a little while to get started. I know a lot of people aren't the biggest fan of that, but personally I do like that slowly building. It's very reminiscent of Stranger Things. You have that awesome piano in the beginning, and you go into that epic chorus. The lyrics are a little cheesy. That's one of the complaints a lot of people have about this album. And yeah, I'll agree. Matt Bellamy's not the strongest lyricist, and a lot of the lyrics are pretty cheesy. Some songs do feel a little meaningless, but they're kind of supposed to tell the story that's portrayed in the music videos. And with that being the case, it is a really cool song overall. I think that the vocal performance is underrated. I think it's overall a great track to open up a great album. I give this one a 9 out of 10. I think it's really awesome. And quickly, just want to talk about the alternate reality Algorithm. I think this is one of the alternate reality songs where it has some aspects that are improved on the original. It's a very cinematic and epic one with the big drums. It's definitely another great potential setlist opener as well. I think it's really epic. It really gets your juices flowing. The epic guitar work near the end of the song, I think it rocks really hard. I think this is one of the times where there's an argument to be made that it is better than the original. It's about a 9 out of 10 as well. Not that I'm going to be giving ratings to every single one of these versions because I don't frequently listen to them, but I think out of all the versions, this is the one that I listen to probably the most, apart from maybe one of the other ones near the end of the album, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, this is one of the ones that I listen to the most because it's really awesome. It really gets you pumped up. So the alternate reality version of Algorithm is definitely a hit in my books. Alrighty, up next we have The Dark Side. So this was one of the singles that was released before the album, and this was the single that got a lot of people hyped. This was the one that got Muse fans on board with this album, because a lot of the singles that were released, I think they released 5, most of them were kind of iffy, I think. A lot of fans were like, really? Does it have to be this? Does it have to be this sound? But Dark Side reassured them that we were going to get something special with this album. What Dark Side is essentially I view it as a song off of Origin of Symmetry, which is of course their most beloved album by the hardcore fans, kind of stylized into an 80s retro twist, but with a modern Muse twist as well, and it works really well. It's one of Matt's more underrated vocal performances again, actually one of the best off the album. I think it's really awesome. A lot of people have compared it to Microcuts. It's not like the insanity of Microcuts, but sort of the structure and the falsetto and kind of the sound of the verses really does kind of give that Microcuts vibe. I really love the falsetto that's employed throughout this song, especially in that final chorus. I love that falsetto. I also have to give a lot of credit to that solo. I think it's unique. I think the guitar tone on that solo is really awesome. A lot of people thought it was a synth solo when they first heard it. It was kind of cool because Matt actually teased that guitar tone in Plug-in Baby at a By Request show. When they performed Plug-in Baby, he used that guitar tone for the Plug-in Baby riff. And when fans got Dark Side, they finally were like, yes, this is it. To be honest, guys, Dark Side was definitely my favorite off the album for a surprisingly long time. And I think that might have shifted, spoiler alert, but it's still really high up there. I'm going to give this one a 10. I think this is some of Muse's best work in a long time. I really, really love The Dark Side. It's a fantastic tune. It's beautiful. It's got that funky element to it. I listen to it so much. There's few songs I listen to as much as Dark Side. Phenomenal song. And as for the alternate reality version of Dark Side, I like to call it Hyperchondriac Dark Side. And the reason I call it that is because it's very similar to how we had the acoustic version of Hyper Music. Hyperchondriac Music was a very slowed down song that gave you almost an entirely different perspective on it. I think this is the same here. I think this one gives you an entirely different perspective on the Dark Side, giving us those piano arpeggios, very similar to Bliss, I've heard it compared to, giving us those piano arpeggios, and then of course giving us that beautiful falsetto. You get that little bit of dissonance at the beginning of each verse, which I really like. And then you go into that guitar solo, which is just, the acoustic tone is absolutely beautiful. I think that the whole tone of this version is beautiful, and it really gives you goosebumps. I think the original is probably better, because this version, it definitely feels a little less unique. It kind of feels like, well, first of all, it is the alternate reality version, but it kind of does feel like songs off of Origin of Symmetry just kind of bundled into one a little bit, and that's because Dark Side is very reminiscent of Origin of Symmetry, and then, just giving it that piano, it's very similar to like Bliss and Microcuts, kind of if they had a baby and were produced by, the 2018 Muse. But I still really like it. I still think it's a great track, and it's definitely some of Muse's most beautiful work. The next track we have is Pressure. Pressure is probably the most popular track in terms of radio success and commercial success off this album. You hear it everywhere. At football games, hockey games, all that, a lot of sporting events, and it's sort of the one that they play to promote the tour and the album a lot of the time. It's a good song. It's actually a really good song. I feel that it's a very similar to Supermassive Black Hole. It's kind of like that Supermassive Black Hole 2, and I think I actually like it better than Supermassive Black Hole. I'm not the biggest fan of that song originally. I think I do like it better than Supermassive Black Hole. It has some good guitar work. I love the brass. They teased it to be a really heavy song. It didn't quite end up being a heavy song, but it kind of felt like they were going for, one of my friends describes it as they're trying their best to have old Muse, to get that old Muse sound, without actually realizing what old Muse was. Oh, let's get guitars, let's make it rock. And they got sort of a Supermassive Black Hole, which I really like, but that's not the old Muse I think that Muse kind of wanted to pander to us fans with. I think a lot of people were expecting, when they heard that this was going to be kind of old Muse and was going to rock hard, they're going to expect something out of Origin of Symmetry, or something a lot like one of the songs later on this album. But it's still a good song. It's still a really good song. It's not one that I listen to frequently, but it really doesn't do anything wrong, and there's actually a lot of good, and it's a really good live tune. It's catchy, and it works well for the events that it's played at. I'm going to give it an 8.5. I think it's a great song. And there's also a marching band version as well, the UCLA Bruins marching band. I don't listen to that version lots, but I really appreciate it. It's really cool. It's kind of a unique little cut that they have. Definitely a fan of that. Don't listen to it that much at all, but it's cool that they have that. Alright, so up next we have one of the more polarizing tracks off the album, or at least it was. This is Propaganda. Now, originally when I heard this album, I actually did not like Propaganda at all, but it really grew on me. And it grew on me a lot. This ended up being one of my absolute favorites off the album. I think this song is fantastic. There's so much I love about it. I love that Prince-inspired feel. I love the verses, that falsetto. That's very similar to Prince. They were very inspired by Prince. And I do love the hook there of the propaganda. I mean, the first time you hear it, when you hear that epic propaganda intro, it's a little much. It's a little jarring. It's kind of weird. But then when it goes straight into that Prince feel, that acoustic sound, it's like, whoa, that's awesome. This is one that I think is going to be awesome live. I love this song. I think that the guitar solo is awesome. That little acoustic guitar solo really gets your juices flowing. And it finishes off with a really fantastic climax and a really great ending with falsetto and just everything that I love about this album. It's experimental, it's unique, it's fresh. It's something that we haven't really heard from Muse before. I know that they compared it a lot to Supermassive Black Hole. I think that Pressure is the more Supermassive Black Hole-like song off this album, but I can kind of see that it's kind of like an acoustic-inspired, funky tune, a la Supermassive Black Hole, having that funky feel. But I'm going to give this one a 9.5 out of 10. I think the song is close to perfect. There's also the acoustic version, which I don't listen to frequently, but it's really cool. It gives you a nice little feel. It takes away all the bells and whistles of this version. It just gives you the raw guitar and the vocal performance. And I think it's really good. So I think this is a great song, 9.5 out of 10. Alright, so up next we have Break It To Me. This is one of the most polarizing songs off the album, and it's also one of the most uniquely experimental. It mixes with some elements of dubstep, some hard rocking guitar. It's got some really interesting influence, actually, and it all kind of builds up to that awesome Arabic run, and I think that it's fantastic. And that chorus is among some of Matt's best vocal moments throughout this album. And it also finishes off with an epic Tom Morello, Rage Against the Machine-esque scratching solo, where Matt explained that he tried to make as many crazy noises as possible. And it really worked. It's really cool. It's definitely going to be another awesome live tune. Break It To Me is a really good song. And I understand why some people aren't the biggest fan, because it's definitely different. But it's a great experimental song, and it's different for a reason. I think that it's not something that you could become successful off of making a lot of songs like this. But combining elements of tribal drums, R&B, Rage Against the Machine, Arabic music, and Muse, hard rock, dubstep, all that, you just combine that into one, and you get something pretty awesome. And that's what you got out of Break It To Me. 9.5 out of 10, again. There's also a remix of this that I don't really like at all. Like remotely, it's just kind of useless. I know that they use it in a few of their little goofy Muse skits that they post on the Instagram account, but that's all I know it for. It's really something that I avoid listening to. It's just not that great of a remix in my opinion. It's something that I could live without. Probably my least favorite thing associated with this album is that remix. Alright, let's move on to the next song. Something Human is next, and the first thing I'll say about Something Human is it's a good song. And as Muse fans, we will never settle for good songs. So this song was definitely one of the least popular off of the album. It was released as a single, and it had a very mixed reception. A little more positive than another song we'll talk about later, but it's definitely a good song. There's some things I really love about it. I do love the chorus. I like the lyrics a lot, actually. I like the falsetto. One of my favorite things about the chorus is the sort of synth harmonies with the vocals. I really love that. I love the tone of everything. I love the synths. I love the guitar. I think everything about this song works. There's just nothing that makes me want to come back to it much. And the acoustic version, I feel I don't really love, because a lot of things I love, a lot of the synth work that I loved in Something Human, the original, is taken away from that. But I do love the synths. That's absolutely my favorite part about this song. I think it's just a well-written song. It's a good song. It's going to be a 7.5 out of 10 for me. It's nothing spectacular, but it's a good song, and I enjoy it. Alright, so up next we have Thought Contagion. So this song is a very popular one. It's one of the more known songs off this album. And for me personally, it's probably my least favorite of the main songs off the album. It used to not be. When it first came out, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. But the more I realize, it's kind of a little generic, I think. I feel that it's one of the more generic songs. I think it and Pressure are kind of interchangeable. While I think both songs are great, I think Pressure's a lot better. They do kind of have that generic, trying a bit too hard to be that older style Muse without necessarily getting what made that older style Muse so special to a lot of fans. With Thought Contagion, it kind of almost feels like a radio sellout song where they're just trying to hit the radio. And it's still a good song. If it hit the radio, I'd crank the volume and I'd be like, yeah, Thought Contagion. But I think the issue with Thought Contagion is it's got that millennial loop in the chorus. I love the tone of the guitar and the solo. The solo is awesome. You just kind of got to wait through the whole song. It just seems really basic and just not as complex or interesting as a lot of Muse's work. And I find this album's got some really interesting stuff. Like we talked about Propaganda and Break It To Me. And those are two really interesting, intriguing, and awesome to listen to, and just fantastic and interesting to analyze Muse songs. With this song, it just kind of feels like they took Hysteria and Uprising, which are two of their most popular songs, I'm not the biggest fan of personally, and kind of combined them into one, and gave it sort of that synth theory sound. I threw in a little bit of 80s elements. I'm just not a big fan. I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. It's one that I usually skip nowadays. Fine song, but it's just not my favorite. All right, so next up we have "Get Up and Fight." So this song I think is one of the more disliked songs off the album by the fan base. And that's partially because it's definitely got this very poppy sound. It really does seem like it's trying to be a radio hit. And yeah, it definitely is. It's definitely got that little bit of a generic sound. However, if you can get past that, this song's actually really cool. I think that, again, it does feel like it's got that Imagine Dragons, kind of pandering to the radio audience's sound, but I love the piano portions of it. I love the vocals. The falsetto at the end is actually outstanding. And the lyrics are really good too. I really like how Matt wrote a story that meant a lot to him. It's kind of an emotional song, about his uncle. And I just think that it's awesome the way that they did that. And I really do. I was never the biggest fan of this song, but I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. It definitely grew on me, I think. It's not anything too special, but it's got a lot of great elements. The piano, the vocals, the lyrics, and the emotion behind it, I think, gets it up there. I know it's got that kind of generic feels, but so does Thought Contagion and Pressure for me. And I definitely think that I do like this song more than Thought Contagion. I'm not sure about Pressure. It's about equal with Pressure. It's not one that I listen to all the time, but I'll tell you, it's one that has a lot of good going for it, and that's why I'm going to give it that 8.5 out of 10. Alrighty, Blockades. This is one of my favorites off the album. This is one of the best songs off the album. It's one of my most listened to songs off the album. 10 out of 10. Let's get it out of the way. No, the thing with Blockades is that it's a 10 out of 10 because it's kind of an amalgamation of everything that we loved about Muse and a bunch of Muse songs. You've got synths similar to Bliss. You've got some Knights of Sidonia elements to it. You've got the bass line of Knights of Sidonia. You've got the drumming of Map of the Problematic and just sort of the structure and feel of Map of the Problematic. The chorus is kind of similar to Uprising a little bit. It's also got some very much Resistance album, like the whole album vibes. You've got MK Ultra mixed in there. Then you've got a solo, which is very similar to the solo found in The Handler, I think. Mixed with some other solos, maybe a little bit of Reapers in there. It's an epic sort of stadium-style solo. And it's got, of course, the 80s feel of the rest of the album. So it's a combination of a bunch of Muse songs. But also, it's probably the hardest rocking song on here. It's a hard rocking song. It gets your pulse pounding. It's really epic. It's awesome. And I just love this song. It's one of their better songs they've released in a while. I think I do like Dark Side a little better, but it's really close. Those two are kind of side by side in my overall Muse rankings. I'm going to give this a 10, though, as I said before. I think it's fantastic, and I wish it got a little more recognition. The fan base has kind of turned on it a little bit. However, it not being played live has actually gotten a little bit more positive attention. But Blockades, awesome. Dig Down. Oh boy, so this was the first single released, and they couldn't have chosen a worse first single to release, because boy oh boy, this was not popular amongst the fan base at all. Dig Down, very controversial, very polarizing, similar to Madness. And that's kind of the funny thing, because this song is similar to Madness. This song is Madness too. This song is very much structured like Madness. The synths sound very much like Madness. The whole thing is very Madness-esque. It's basically Madness too. And as someone that loves Madness a lot more than most Muse fans, because I think it's actually some of their best work. I know a lot of Muse fans are like, oh, Madness is the worst. No, Madness is incredible. This song, it just kind of feels like crappy Madness. It's got a cool solo. Again, I like that Madness structure. The vocal performance is pretty good. But it's just kind of not good Madness. But, well, it's not the best song, or not even, very good. I actually kind of really like it. I think it's cheesy. I think that it needs a lot of improvement. I think it seems like something they probably shouldn't have released, especially not as a single. I think Dig Down's a fun to listen to song. I listen to it fairly frequently. I still can't get over the fact that it's basically Madness 2, and it's really cheesy, and it's not really what we want out of Muse at the end of the day. We'd prefer to get more Blockades and Dark Sides, but I guess it kind of fits. It oddly enough doesn't necessarily fit the album either. It's like a weird addition. It doesn't really fit into the grand scheme of things for Muse as a whole. They have the acoustic gospel version, which is actually really awesome. Definitely much better. I really think the acoustic gospel version is awesome. and they're playing that one live, it appears, and that's what makes it really good that we're hearing that version live, preferably over the original Dig Down. I don't know, Dig Down just feels generic. A lot of hardcore Muse fans really hate on this song. I'm going to give this song a 6.5 out of 10. I do like it more than Thought Contagion. I actually do like it a fair bit, but it's just not very good. So 6.5 out of 10, but I personally enjoy it a lot. And finishing it off, we have The Void, also known as Ruled by Secrecy 2.0. The Void is the best song off this album. They end this album with a bang. This is an absolutely beautiful piece of music. So the original Void is awesome. I really like the usage of the synths. I think it's really a fantastically epic song. I love all the effects. One of my favorite parts of the song is the wub wubs at the end. I've called it the showbiz ending of wub wubs because it's really awesome. The final "You're Wrongs" with the wub wubs, that gives you chills. So many chills from that. It's very Stranger Things-esque, and it just builds up. I love the background noises like the strings. I think that this song's fantastic. Lyrically, it's awesome. I love the drumming. And then the "A Star." That part there, the low note that he hits, is just mesmerizing. It's absolutely beautiful. It's haunting. It's incredible. 10 out of 10, without a doubt. Best song on the album, one of the best songs in years. And then on the other side, you have the acoustic version, which is surprisingly maybe even better. Now, I do love the effects of the original. I think they're fantastic. But the acoustic version, it just gives you that raw beauty of the vocal performance, which is one of Matt's better vocal performances, I think. Instead of, going all out with the falsetto like he often does, he stays very low, but he just focuses on, sustaining those notes and hitting some of those low notes and controlling his voice, and it gives you chills. It's really haunting. It's a fantastic vocal performance. You have that beautiful piano. It's just haunting, mesmerizing. It's a song that you close the door in a dark room, you listen to. Both versions are 10s. Man, this song is just incredible. Alright, so for the final score of this album, I'm going to give this album an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's a very good Muse album. I think it's a very good album in general. Not the best Muse album, of course, but, it's probably top 5. Not quite the upper half, but it's still really good, and I still love a lot of the songs. There's some modern classics, some instant hits among the fan base. Fantastic ride to go along with, and the best songs on here like Dark Side, Blockades, Break to Me, Propaganda, and of course, The Void. Fantastic listening. Absolutely incredible. Some of the great songs on here you might not appreciate at first. And some of the ones that are weaker you might not find to be weaker at first. That's one of the things like I originally did not like Propaganda that much or Break to Me, while I was a big fan of Something Human, Thought Contagion. But as time went on, it flipped for me because I started to appreciate the musical intricacies of the Propaganda and Break It To Me. Just the whole songs are just absolutely fascinating. And they're two songs that are really interesting. Two of the most intriguing songs in Muse's discography. So I encourage you to listen to everything on this album multiple times to get sort of a real feel for it. But guys, thanks for watching this video. Let me know what your thoughts are below, and I'll see you guys all later. Bye.